So, in my first big theory video, I mentioned the whole third entity theory, and why I thought it was a little bit outlandish to actually fit into the story of Deltarune. The theory basically argues that there is a third entity inside of Kris besides the player and, well, Kris themselves. The main points of evidence for this are the 3 save files and Kris's sometimes weird actions when we aren't in control. However, there is one huge piece of evidence towards this theory that can't be overlooked. The fact that Kris hatches a crazy plan to make a Dark Fountain after Chapter 2, even after a Snowgrave route. The fact that Kris would witness the player manipulating a close friend to kill a classmate and a ton of Darkners, and then choose to open another Dark Fountain to allow the same thing to happen again, just doesn't make much sense. And it leads most to the conclusion that there must be another entity inside of Kris that was responsible for this. And while this isn't to deny the third entity theory entirely, what if I told you that there's actually a good explanation for Kris's actions here? What if I told you that Kris is not only rational here, but that it might even be a good plan? During this video, I'm going to show you another perspective of Kris's actions that I believe makes much more sense. Before we start the video though, make sure to subscribe. Only about 5% of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, and I plan to make one of these theory videos every week, so I promise I'll make it worth your time. With that said though, let's get on to the theory. First, let's go over what Kris's plan actually is, and what we see them do. Well, after Susie is welcomed into their house by Toriel, Kris forces a sleepover by slashing Toriel's car tires, meaning that Toriel can no longer drive Susie home. Afterwards, Kris hears Toriel call the police from the other room, and then sees Toriel drift off to sleep with Susie in the living room. It's here that Kris then turns on the TV, opens the door, and then creates a Dark Fountain right in the middle of the living room, before putting their soul back in and finally drifting back to sleep themselves. I'd like to ask you something. If you woke up and had your body possessed for 2 straight days and nobody around you knew, what would you do? I imagine that if most of us were in Kris's situation, we'd try to go to the people that we trust the most for help. Even if they aren't strong enough to do anything about what's happening, they would at least notice that we're acting much differently than we normally do, and that something is wrong. Now I ask you, what does Kris do at the end of Chapter 2? They set up a Dark Fountain in their own home, and bring Susie and Toriel into it, 2 of the people that Kris trusts the most in this world. Not only that, but they even unlock the door so that the police can come help if anything goes awry in their plan. Kris probably knows from Chapter 1 that we the player can't manipulate Susie, no matter how hard we try. And if Susie didn't make that clear in Chapter 1, then she certainly did in Chapter 2. Toriel would also know if there is something wrong with Kris, or if they are acting differently. I mean, I'd hope that Kris's own mother would notice her own child acting strange after all. And in the case of this taking place after a Snowgrave route in Chapter 2, something tells me that it's going to be a lot harder to manipulate Toriel as a grown adult than a scared and innocent childhood friend. Kris knows that Susie and Toriel will both come with them to the Dark World, and who better to choose than the 2 people closest to you. Even in the case of Chapter 2 ending in a Snowgrave route, Kris probably imagines that there is little risk here. Again, Susie has proven herself capable of resisting our control, and Toriel will have much stronger willpower as an adult, or at the very least, will notice something different about Kris. Whether we commit a Snowgrave run or not, Kris's plan here makes it much more likely that someone will at least notice what's going on with them. So, what about the police then? Kris opens the door presumably so that the police will be able to get in. But why? Well, this could have definitely been an impromptu addition to the plan after hearing Toriel call the police, making sure that if Toriel is somehow manipulated, then at least the police will be there to help prevent anything bad from happening. This actually does go a bit deeper though. In Chapter 2, we see that Kris is much more open about sharing things about the Dark World to Undyne, even if she doesn't believe them at all. In addition, earlier that same day, Kris saw Undyne lifting a car during the traffic jam, which means that they know Undyne is an incredibly strong person, more than capable of defending herself. These two details make it clear that Kris not only knows the police are strong enough to protect themselves, but also that Kris trusts them enough to tell them about the Dark World. Even if Undyne didn't believe Kris in the police station, she'll definitely believe them once she gets to experience the Dark World firsthand. And that's basically it. It's a pretty good explanation all around for why Kris does what they do, even in the case of a Snowgrave wait, I think I'm forgetting something. Oh, right. The TV. Kris deliberately turns the TV back on in the ending cutscene, but why? You know, I was actually stumped by this for a long time in making this theory. Every other part of this plan has a pretty good explanation that essentially involves bringing strong and trustable people into the Dark World. Except turning on the TV. However, I have a thought of two possible explanations that solve this issue. My first explanation involves Spamton, and specifically Mike. Now look, I know that there is a lot of mystery around Mike, and he might just end up being a reference to the Big Shot soda ads. However, there is one detail that we learn about Mike from Spamton. He's the man on TV, and Spamton describes him as a game show host. Spamton warns Kris about meeting Mike and overall paints a picture of Mike as a friend who betrayed him, but considering that Spamton parallels Kris's situation scarily well, it makes me think that Kris might go to Mike to find out more about Spamton. If Kris can find out more about how Spamton got in the predicament he's in, maybe they can get more clues about their own situation. Thus, what better way to get in contact with a TV salesman than to make a TV-themed Dark World, where Kris might be able to meet Mike and learn more about Spamton through him. This is a pretty good theory, but there is one issue with it. We don't always get to hear these lines about Mike in every route of the game, despite Kris still turning on the TV no matter what we do. There is still another theory I have for Kris turning on the TV though. What if Kris turns on the TV to make some of his favorite TV show characters into Darkners? It's a bit of a stretch, but if you had the ability to make them real for a short period of time, then wouldn't you want some of your favorite fictional characters to help you out too? While it is somewhat of a childish idea, Kris is still pretty young themselves. Plus, wouldn't any kid have the thought of doing this if they realized they could turn any inanimate object into reality? It definitely has much less supporting evidence for it, but I could honestly see this happening if one of these two theories ends up being true. And that's basically my theory on what Kris's real plan is for Chapter 3. I'd like to shout out TigerShark859 for inspiring this video from a theory video of their own. To be honest, I actually talked with a friend about this theory way back when Chapter 2 first came out, but forgot about it until I saw Tiger Shark's video on it. However, while watching their video, I noticed that our main evidence for the theory was very different, so I wanted to make my own video covering the theory. I know that this interpretation of Kris's plan doesn't involve any 4D chess or anything wild like that, and while I may cover some crazy theories about it later on, we have to remember that Kris is still just a kid in elementary school after all. I'm not saying it's impossible for them to have a complex plan or anything, but just that I find it much more fitting that Kris would have a simpler plan like this due to their age. Anyways, if you want to see more theories like this, I'll be uploading them every week, so make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to see them. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.